The night was calm, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like the world is holding its breath. The stars twinkled faintly above the city, their light barely piercing through the glow of streetlights. The streets were empty, and the houses were dark, their inhabitants drifting into peaceful slumber. But no one could have guessed that the next morning would bring a day so strange, so surreal, that it would leave the entire city in shock and teach its people a lesson they would never forget. Jack, a 12-year-old boy with messy brown hair and a perpetually impatient expression, lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He was always in a hurry to grow up. To him, adulthood meant freedom. No rules, no bedtime, no one telling him what to do. He often complained about how unfair it was to be a child. "Adults have it so easy," he would mutter under his breath, ignoring his mother's gentle reminders to finish his homework or eat his vegetables. "Jack, finish your breakfast," his mother called from the kitchen the next morning, her voice soft but firm. She was a kind woman, always patient, always trying to guide him. Her floral dress swayed as she moved, her apron dusted with flour from the pancakes she had made. Jack frowned, pushing his plate of pancakes aside. "I'm not hungry. Why do you always tell me what to do?" he grumbled, his voice tinged with frustration. His mother sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly, but she said nothing. She knew Jack didn't understand the sacrifices she made every day, the late nights spent worrying, the early mornings preparing meals, the endless patience required to raise a child. She hoped that one day he would see how much she had given up for him. But that day came sooner than a hope. When Jack woke up the next morning, something felt off. His body felt heavier, his limbs longer. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, only to freeze in shock. His hands were no longer the small, delicate hands of a child. They were large, calloused, and strong. He scrambled out of bed and rushed to the mirror, his heart pounding in his chest. The reflection staring back at him was that of a grown man. His face was mature, with a strong jawline and a faint shadow of stubble. His voice, when he gasped, was deep and resonant. Jack stumbled back, his mind racing. "What's happening to me?" he whispered, his voice trembling. He rushed to his parents' room, hoping for some explanation, but what he found only deepened his confusion. His father, a tall and serious man who had always been the pillar of their family, was sitting on the floor, giggling like a child as he pushed toy cars across the carpet. He was still wearing his usual button-up shirt and slacks, but his demeanor was completely different. Playful, carefree, and utterly childlike. Jack's mother, now a small, wide-eyed girl with pigtails, was holding a doll, carefully braiding its hair with a look of pure innocence on her face. She was still. Jack, Emily, and Carl found themselves drawn together by the chaos. They met in the park, their adult bodies feeling awkward and unfamiliar. Jack looked at the others, his expression grim. "We have to do something," he said, his deep voice carrying a note of determination. Emily nodded, her eyes wide with worry. "But how? No one's listening to us. The kids, the adults, they're just running wild." Carl crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "We have to try. If we don't, this city is going to fall apart." The trio set out to restore order, but it was no easy task. They tried to convince the tiny adults to act responsibly, but the little ones were having too much fun. Some refused to do homework, others demanded ice cream for breakfast, and a few ran through the streets without a care, their laughter echoing through the air. By afternoon, exhaustion had set in. Jack, who had once wished to be an adult, realized how hard it was. Making decisions, handling responsibilities, and taking care of others was not as exciting as he had imagined. He missed the simplicity of being a child, the freedom to play and dream without the weight of the world on his shoulders. Emily struggled to keep her tiny parents under control, her patience wearing thin as they threw tantrums and refused to listen. Carl was overwhelmed by his father's endless demands for chocolate, his deep voice growing hoarse from trying to reason with the stubborn child. As night fell, the city grew quiet once more. Jack sat on the steps of his house, staring up at the stars. He closed his eyes and whispered a wish. "I want everything back to normal. I want to be a kid again." A soft glow spread across the sky, and as everyone drifted into sleep, a magical transformation took place. The lesson learned. The next morning, Jack woke up to find everything back to normal. He was 12 again, his body small and familiar. He rushed to his parents' room and found them as they had always been, his father tall and serious, his mother kind and patient. The city was as it had always been, the chaos of the previous day nothing more than a distant memory. Jack smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He hugged his mother tightly, his voice soft. "I understand now. Being a child is a blessing. I'll enjoy every moment of it." This experience changed everyone. The children learned to appreciate their parents' efforts, and the adults rediscovered the joy of childhood. Life, they realized, was about balance. Every stage had its own beauty, its own challenges and rewards. Parents, they understood, were the silent warriors who sacrificed their dreams to shape their children's future. Their love was the foundation on which great lives were built. And as the city returned to normal, the people within it carried with them a newfound appreciation for the roles they played in each other's lives.